Buonasera a tutti. It is Saturday evening, which means we are back. What's the Scoop? Episode number 69. I'm Ryan Scoop Woodhams. This is my buddy Brandon Furtado. Brandon, how you doing, my guy?
Same as always, Scoop. Same as always. Doing good. Wish the Yankees would do better tonight, but listen, can't complain too much. Got the finals on. We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, so let's get into it.
You're watching NBA right now, right?
Yep.
Okay. And when I asked you a few minutes ago, is it still tied, or what's the current score on that one?
Right now the Pacers are up 5 with about 2.5, 3 minutes to go. They're on commercial now because they're looking at a potential offensive foul on the Knicks. So
Okay.
still a tight game. So
All right. You'll keep us updated on the score on that one. And
yeah.
just real quick, for those who are going to be watching tonight, just going to be 100% transparent with y'all because I try to do that on every episode of this show. It's about Aaron Judge percent relative humidity where I am right now on the Gulf of America coast. So I got fans going at me from both sides. If y'all have trouble hearing me, please just throw something in the comments. Brandon, you do the same because I want to make sure everybody can hear both of us tonight. Other than that, let's get right into it. So you mentioned the game that was going on earlier today, and I know we both, from yesterday's game, had war flashbacks to Game 5 of 2024 World Series, had a strong, what looked like a fairly safe lead, but as we learned the hard way, once again, no lead is safe against the LA Dodgers, and obviously that one was none too pleasing to watch throughout the rest of the way. And of course, today, Will Warren had a bit of a sophomore slump-esque type of game against the Dodgers as well. Obviously, when you're still going through your sort of first 1 or 2 seasons as a rookie pitcher, not a lineup that is obviously the easiest to face. So he got a bit of a welcome to the big leagues kid type of moment in that game. But so I'll leave this one to you. So do you what do you take away from these first 2 games against the Dodgers? Do you look at this as, oh, we're setting ourselves up for 2024 revisited 2.0, or do you look at it as we were bound to, Max Fried and some of those guys were bound to hit a bit of a rough patch eventually? It was just, unfortunate that it happened when it did against whom it did, but you think we're going to be fine. But where are you on that spectrum of everything?
I'm not, and I've been talking about this on Twitter all night so far tonight, and most people seem to be on the side of things, on the same side as me. But I look at it as, a couple things here. So with the pitching staff, I think they'll be fine. They're not going to play the Dodgers the rest of this year. It's like, to me, the biggest, bugaboo with the Yankees, it's the Dodgers. I feel like, it's the one team that you've proven that you really can't beat right now. So it's, but it's early in the season. We're only at the very end of May. I mean, tomorrow's the first day of June, so we're still kind of, we're getting towards the midway point of the season, but not quite yet. But I think that the pitchers were due for all these pitchers in this staff. We're due for a bad game at some point. Yeah, it stinks that it happened when it did. I mean, for Matt, I'm a little bit more disappointed in Max Fried because, I mean, this was basically, to me, the way I looked at it last night. Whenever the Dodgers, it's on prime time. Everybody knows that it's a big game, and he's had we know what his postseason struggles have been like. So because his postseason career, he has not been good, and this is basically a postseason atmosphere, and he looked terrible. I mean, like he the first inning got roughed up a little bit, settled down, and that 6th inning was a complete disaster. And it wasn't like he was tired yet. I mean, he only had, I think, about at that point, like 60, 65 pitches, something to that effect. So it wasn't like it was fatigue. He just was missing location on a lot of his pitches last night. And then tonight, I mean, Will Warren, I expected. Will Warren has not faced a lineup like this ever. So, I don't look at it as a bad thing for him. I look at it as a little bit worse on Max Fried's part, but it's a lot of the same things that have kind of failed the Yankees. I mean, last year too. I mean, their defense hasn't been bad in this series through the first 2 games, but it's maybe a little bit slow getting the balls. Tonight Goldschmidt, should have had double play, but he didn't even bother to really stretch for the baseball. That bothered me a little bit. Like everything the Dodgers do, in my eyes, they seem to be so focused and so locked in at every level, and you just don't see that. At least not with me. When it's like it feels like it's night and day watching these two teams play each other, and I just think that in the end, are the Yankees the class of the AL? Yeah, they got the second best record behind the Tigers, but the Tigers, the Yankees can handle. I think the Yankees can handle the Tigers.
Right.
And the Tigers aren't going to stay hot forever. The Yankees, we know, will be in the thick of things come October. So it's just, they're the best in the AL. But to me, you got to prove that you can beat the best in baseball, and right now that's the Dodgers. And through these first two games, they've black or a better word. I can't find any other word to describe it. They've looked horrible in these first two games. So it's just between last night being almost an exact replay of Game 5, and then you have tonight where just nothing went right from the first pitch of the game, pretty much. It's not a recipe for success. And so you hope that you can at least salvage the series tomorrow. But there is a silver lining tonight. Aaron Judge did hit his 20th home run of the season.
Right.
But other than that, there's not many positives you can take away from this other than, hey, just it's early on. It's not the World Series yet, but these are things that have hurt the Yankees in the past, like poor situational hitting, poor kind of defense in the moment, poor poor situational pitching, not hitting your spots. These are all things that have kind of just basically derailed them, and it derailed them last year in the World Series, and it's going to derail them, these first two games. So you just hope that later on it's still not a problem. You hope that later on they correct it. You got to see what they do with the deadline. That's still ways away yet.
Right.
So there's still some things that they can do. I just want to see them do it. So I'm not worried yet. I'm not at a panic level yet, but I definitely want to see them at least tomorrow. Show me something. Even if you don't win the game, show me something. Show me you can at least compete with them, because you didn't show it the first two games so far.
Right. I think that's a fair assessment. And I will say, despite the fact that this game today was obviously a much uglier run differential thus far. We're down 9 and it's only the fifth inning. Aside from this one being a much uglier run differential than yesterday's game was actually the one that upset me more. Let's look at these from a pitching standpoint. Let's look at pitching first from these last 2 days. Will Warren, as much as Yankees fans have been crapping on him, he doesn't even have 80 innings pitched in the major leagues yet. So, when it comes to a big moment in October, these three pitchers, Brent Hedrick, Yuri De Los Santos, and Will Warren, those are not going to be the guys who are throwing the big moments for you in October. And if they are, something's gone dang wrong with them. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned about that really at all. Max Fried, I'm sorry, pitcher, even at the prime of his career, even Pedro Martinez was having clunkers. And our pitching has gone well enough the past month. We're going back to mid-April. Max Fried's not even our best pitcher. Carlos Rodon has been our best pitcher. So if we're getting back, if God willing, somehow we get back Garrett Cole at the end of the season, which I don't know how that would happen, but if it did happen and you're getting him back as a 3, if Garrett Cole is your 3 at any point, you're doing something right. So I believe it. I believe in Max Fried to shake this one off as a one-off. Obviously, it sucks that it was against the Dodgers, who have been our daddy since Houston started to come back to earth. So obviously that's disappointing and not what you want to see. As our former manager would say, it's not what you want. But at the same time, I think that to take this as a sign, same old Yankees, it's 2024, revisited. I think that that's an overreaction. I think that that's I pointed out a couple of days ago how, we were winning games, not just with the home run, not just with, the 3 true outcomes and whatnot. I see a decent amount of that with, this lineup up and down. Obviously, it's great that Aaron Judge hit that home run today. But we were also seeing multiple guys taking their walks today. Our strikeout totals actually have been pretty on par with the Dodgers the last 2 days. So it's not like we're striking out 13 times and they're at 5 or 6. We're pretty on par with them in that regard. It just, excuse me, sometimes you just get into a position where we had one error yesterday, and obviously you can't have errors to begin with, but one error yesterday ended up costing us, and it was excuse me, it was the Oswald Peraza grounder at third base that allowed Andy Pages to advance. Obviously, thankfully it didn't end up costing us too badly, but it's like you said, you got to do the little things right. But I also haven't looked at things as being fundamentally off necessarily against LA these last 2 days, and I take that as a bit of reassurance where these situations that have been hurting us the last 2 days, these aren't situations that if you look at us in a big game, you look at that as, oh, this is something that if it happens again is like if you know what I'm saying. These aren't high leverage situations that we're looking at as, oh, if he can't come through for us, we're screwed. The guys that we need to come through have been coming through. The guys that have been struggling, unfortunately, are pretty much replaceable guys that we don't even know are going to be on the roster at that point. Because you go into a World Series roster, a lot of the Brent Hedrick types, a lot of these Yuri De Los Santos types, a lot of those guys are not going to be on that roster.
Yeah. And the biggest thing, I think the thing that's probably the most disheartening, really, it's not the fact that you're losing to the Dodgers as badly as you had the last 2 days. It's right. I think it's the fact that they're just as banged up as you are, and they're still beating the hell out of you. So it's like that feels a little bit disheartening. But it's like it's funny because really fundamentally they haven't been, at least like in the field. Fundamentally at the plate is another thing, but fundamentally at the field, they've played pretty clean. It's a lot of just kind of questionable pitch calling in certain situations. It's been a lot of mislocations. It's been just a couple of just straight up balls just not really it just comes down. The pitching has been, these 2 games has been the bugaboo, but it stinks that also, like, when this team, and I feel like in these 2 games too, when it needed to respond after a big inning, it feels like the wind has kind of come out of their sail a little bit.
Right.
And it's tough. I at least well, not so much yesterday, but tonight, I definitely think that, well, at least one thing I've noticed, I mean, the Dodgers, the play discipline is roughly around the same between both teams. But it's the kind of swings from the Dodgers where I'm seeing where everything seems to be level, everything seems to be aggressive. They don't miss on cookies down the middle. I hate saying we sometimes, but we're Yankee fans, but Yankee fans, we see it where our team will take up, like, tonight. Dominguez, I think, took 3 straight pitches in the same spot in the plate. It was like an inner third, of almost down the middle, and it was the same mile per hour, 93, same spot basically 3 times. So it's rough. You have young guys trying to figure it out. You have veterans that are, they're not killing the ball like a Freddie Freeman would. That was my biggest thing, was that, Freddie Freeman, I still wish Freddie Freeman was a Yankee. Even though I love Goldschmidt now, I wish that they would have got Freddie Freeman then. I love how he plays the game. But yeah, I'm not like the whole, like, the world's falling down kind of Yankee fan with this series. Like, am I disappointed? Am I angry? Yeah, a little bit.
Of course.
But it's just, don't let the same mistakes you made last year and some of the mistakes you made in the first 2 games affect you come October. That's, I want to see it. And the thing is, like you said, some of these guys won't even be here. Like, if you look at, Heel's coming back next month, Jazz coming back next month, Stan's coming back soon. So, you hope those guys, when they come back, get into a rhythm, and you want them to. And Stan is a great postseason performer. I'm not worried about him for the postseason, Jazz, I want to see a
He's
little
been
hope.
arguably the best postseason performer we've had in the post Core 4 era.
Yeah, basically since Jeter. Yeah, if you look at the numbers, he really has been. Which is crazy because in the regular season he's either been hurt or he's been batting, somewhere around like 220, whatever it is. But so it's rough right now, and it's rough tonight that you're losing to basically your longtime rival, one of your longtime rivals. But
Right.
it's especially on a national stage where everybody can watch you.
Right.
But I mean, the Yankees primetime TV has never been favorable to the Yankees, really, if you think about it. They've lost a lot of big, primetime games over the years during seasons. So you got to take that into account. That just primetime hasn't been. We've kind of been like almost like a Kirk Cousins kind of primetime performer.
Well, I will say, I mean, you remember what we figured out about Kirk Cousins a week or two ago, that his numbers actually in those situations kind of surprised both of us.
Yeah,
but
the numbers aren't bad, but it's always that one mistake at the end or whatever it is. But
and that's kind of like where you and I talk about, how you kind of balance, the eye test with the numbers. Is like, if you had just gone off the eye test, you would have thought, oh, Kirk Cousins is a bum when it matters.
Exactly.
And then you go and see the numbers. It was like, oh, shuck. I'll say shucks because I think my grandmother's watching. But and I do just want to just add something real quick. I do want to add some context to something we talked about a little bit ago. Is that actually on pitches in the strike zone? I went back and looked. The Yankees actually were more aggressive swinging at pitches in the strike zone yesterday than the Dodgers were.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers on tonight's game yet because they only have game numbers released post game. But it is encouraging, at least for me, to see that at least New York is getting better at not getting cheated against this team. Actually it's been a very bizarre. Like, I'm looking at the box score from today's game, and like the guys who are doing really well, like Max Muncy has 7 RBI. He's hitting 222 this year with a slugging under 400. Meanwhile, Teoscar Hernandez, who's having a great season, is 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. It's like the guys who are doing the best this season are clunking today, and the guys who are it's like the most antithetical box score you could imagine. Similarly with Landon Knack, who's pitching, he's got an ERA of almost 5, but he's pitching 5 innings of 1-run ball.
Yeah, that seems to be, and probably the last thing that I will say when it comes to the Yankees too. It's like that seems to be a theme I think with the Yankees a lot too. Is you selling not all the time. It's not 100%, no doubt, but you just see a lot of the time. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. Maybe if the pitchers just get excited to play the Yankees, but it always feels like to me watching these games, it's always the guys with the highest ERA that make the Yankees hitting look silly sometimes. So,
like, do you feel like we're almost like playing down to our perceived competition a little bit?
I feel like they don't do it, I think, as often as people say, because listen, it's still professionals. Any team can win.
It's Yankees fans and Yankees media. Everyone's going to be a drama queen. So
yeah, like I think I see it just based on the eye test, but I don't buy into it too heavy because you always know that the Yankees will be there in October. It's just
right.
It's just that it's like I said, watching them fail to do little things in big games is what I'm like. Okay, it doesn't hurt them now, but I don't want to see those things pop up again later. And it seems like the last really like decade, at least in my eyes, that when they fail to do the little things well in certain games over and over and over again during a season, despite being first in the AL East and being the AL pennant winner and things like that, it always seems to end up costing them. Like, they couldn't beat the Astros for a long time. There's a lot of same mistakes against the Astros. Can't beat the Dodgers now. I'm seeing a lot of the same mistakes. Not a lot, in terms of the fielding's okay in this series, but other things have hurt them. So it's just, it's hard to get. It almost feels like with the Yankees, they have to almost play perfect to win games against the teams that have given them trouble. And it's because it almost feels like they can't come back. It almost feels like they can't really come back against these teams that they struggle against. And it just feels like, it is what it is. But, listen, you still got the second best record in the AL. You're still, Watts time you'd be 5.5 games up.
Also, as of right now, it looks like that's going to change in a couple of hours. But currently, actually have a better record than the Dodgers.
Yeah, which is insane to think about. And then the Dodgers, I think that's another reason why people kind of got a little bit pissy was because it was it was tough to think that, oh, they were in a dogfight against the Mets a little bit. They were struggling against, plenty of teams. They had lost to Cleveland. It felt like, oh, the Yankees could take advantage of this. But then when you realize, oh, the Yankees also have had, like, the last 3 series have been against easier teams, and now you're finally playing a good one for the first time in a while. It's like, okay, now we're going to see what both teams are made of, and right now the Dodgers have the right stuff. So, it's tough. But listen,
Excuse me.
it's only a 3-game series. It's not even the middle of the season yet. But I will keep an eye on if these things kind of rear their ugly head. So we'll see what
Absolutely.
happens.
It goes back to, I always have to get in my Colin Coward reference at least once a show. He always says, nothing is everything, everything is something. I think that, fits perfectly here where, you're not going to make a mountain out of a molehill, but this is something to watch if if you start, getting into a trend where you're beating up on, Baltimore, Chicago, wherever Oakland plans to be playing on that given day, and Colorado. But you keep playing the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they turn you into baby food. Like it's like it. There's going to always be some questions about that, but I as of right now, especially if tomorrow they can come back, like you said, I want them to come back and show something tomorrow.
Yeah.
If they do that, I'll feel a lot better about the situation, especially because going into that game, it's another ESPN game, and we're going up against Yamamoto. We're not favored to win, but Ryan Yarbrough, which is who we're starting, has been sneaky for us. He had a bad start for us, but he's been sneaky for us recently. And you made a comment earlier about both teams are banged up, which I would agree with. However, I would argue that we talk about leverage, right? I would argue that the impact of the guys that we've lost is more significant. Like, yes, like Mookie Betts is hurt, but he's not expected to go on even on the IL. We've lost, one of our best hitters in Stanton. We've lost Garrett Cole. We've lost like some epicenter players, like Jazz Chisholm, who was one of our most versatile base stealing, get on base, athleticism. Like these are epicenter pieces to our team. And I'm not saying that they didn't lose those types of guys too, but they had shown already that they could win, could win, and we're chasing them. So we're not running this race from ahead, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue that it's a little bit different animal. And I'm in no way using that as an excuse. I'm just adding context to the situation.
Yeah.
With that being said, as much as I could talk about baseball all episode, I know that that's not our plan. So with that being said, we didn't get to this last time. I know it was on our agenda last week, but before we go any further, I know we wanted to get to this. Both of us being Philly fans, both of us being NFC East fans and NFC fans, obviously, and both of us having, to be PC, I'll say comparable opinions of the San Francisco 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
What was your initial take when you heard that the long-rumored Brock Purdy deal officially came together to get those official numbers together and just kind of put that out for anybody who hasn't seen? It was a 5-year, $265 million contract extension that they signed. The deal included over $182 million in guaranteed money. $100 million was fully guaranteed at signing, and a no-trade clause.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I think I had the same reaction. I know a couple of our buddies did. I just thought it was an overpay. I mean, the market is crazy nowadays for quarterbacks. I think we can all agree that quarterbacks should not be getting paid this kind of money. No. But at the same time, it's just the market. Teams are willing to pay for guys that they believe in, that are important to their success. And is Brock Purdy important to the Niners' success? Yes, he is. Is he $50+ million important? I don't think so. I for my whole time watching him, and I've been called out on Twitter for this, but it's just on what I've seen, what I've heard. Can Brock Purdy? Can you win with him? Yes. Do you win because of him? No.
Exactly.
And that's one thing I think a lot of fans kind of forget about this is that does he elevate the team to win? Does he put a team on his back to win? No. When he's lost, and we've said this before, we beat this horse to death. It feels like a lot, but oh, by the way, the Pacers Knicks game just started the third quarter.
Okay.
So yeah, when you get to somebody like Brock Purdy, is his story great? Yes. Should be getting paid more than what his draft status was? Of course.
Right.
He's great for where he should have been, but he's not that elite guy. And I think we even said before that we could name at least 10 quarterbacks right now that are probably better than him. So, and he's getting paid, kind of in that top like 7 range. And it's like, okay, but that's not really the answer. So I think it's an overpay. But and here's the thing too. So you paid him, but now you're almost having a soft rebuild because you're the gut, you're a team. So his contract, when you get down the line, is going to factor into what you do with a lot of other guys. So I kind of wish, maybe they could have found a way to take a little bit off that contract. I don't know, if they just felt like, hey, he's our guy, we're sticking with him. But to me, overall, it's an overpay, and I don't think that's going to change my mind. When he loses even one of his core guys on that team, they falter. He just lost Deebo Samuel to Washington, so I'm very curious to see how he plays this year with kind of a little bit of different offense. A little bit of a different team overall. Because if he can't get back to being the guy that helped get them to a Super Bowl, then I think it's an overpay. The thing is, I don't think their window is really there anymore for it. When you think about how competitive the Lions and Eagles and Washington are, I think that window has kind of passed them. So I'm very interested to see how he plays, but overall, I think it's an overpay.
I'm looking at Spot Track right now, and well, first and foremost, let me say I agree with you that it's an overpay. But I'm looking right now, and everyone's talked about the total value of the contract, but most people know that most of these guys are never going to see the entire value of their contract.
Yep.
So I'm looking at, and what I like about Spot Track, well, I like a lot about them, but one of the things they do is they break it down and they have practical guarantee, which is basically the money that they're likely to actually realize out of that contract. And they have ranked in, I'm not going to read the figures of every one of them because frankly, some of them are extremely right down to the last dollar, but just in terms of ranking order, they got Josh Allen, which I think, even though he hasn't won, I think there's a lot of people who would, think that that's fair. Dak Prescott, which I know we've talked about to death. And I think, and actually this has actually been a deal to which this has been largely compared. Number 3, Deshaun Watson. Cleveland is Cleveland. That's all I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, and then Brock Purdy comes right after that. So Brock Purdy's 8th. I would probably say, from my perspective, of those 7 ahead of him, there's about 4 that I can rationalize and about 3 that I can't. The ones that I can rationalize, I think, are Allen, Burrow, and Jackson. I think that Prescott, Watson, Herbert, and Lawrence are hard to justify. But that's my personal opinion. And then actually, ironically enough, right behind Purdy, and by right behind, I mean just about $3 million behind, is Jalen Hurts, which is another person that I can agree with because, and I'll say this once because I don't want to derail this and talk about Philly because it'll end up being the whole rest of our show. But even if Jalen Hurts is not actively being the reason you won a game, he can do something that means that your defensive schemes and your defensive practices throughout the week, you're having to prepare for him in a way you are not having to prepare for about 29 other quarterbacks in the NFL. You are not trying to go out there and having to worry about his mobility and his ability to break off with anybody except for Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, and Josh Allen. Those are the only 3 guys that you are having to do that for. Tell me if I'm wrong. If there's another guy that I'm missing, tell me if I'm wrong. But those are the only 3 guys that you are thinking about in that same way. And Excuse me. And again, that's on top of the fact that they had the best running back, best running attack in football last year. Quarterback independent. So the fact that it diversifies and breaks down, it's like when people talk about and I don't mean to, I'm not trying to equate the two in any sort of way, but it's like when people say divide and conquer in militaristically or whatever the case may be. What if you have to break down and put yourself in other areas, it weakens your attack. And that's what he forces defensive coordinators, defensive coaches, all of that. That's what he forces them to do. So he is not just physically is he a threat, but he's mentally a threat in preparation before you even step on that football field.
Yeah. And I think the only other quarterback I would throw in the mix is maybe Jaden Daniels right now. But I do. But here's
Thank
the
you.
thing I'll say
I knew I was forgetting somebody. Thank you, Jaden Daniels.
But here's the thing I'll say about this too, because I've also, I've written articles about the Eagles a ton of times and about the NFC East in general, and then obviously winning a Super Bowl, you write a lot of articles about them in general. But Jalen Hurts finished with the third most rushing yards for a QB last year. Third. Out of all the starting quarterbacks, actually out of all the quarterbacks in general, third. So you have to game plan for his legs. You always have had to. I mean, the Rams found that out the hard way when he rushed a 50-yard touchdown into in the NFC divisional round. So, you can't take that kind of stuff for granted. And the thing is here, what's important with that running game is this is why them running the RPOs is more effective than any other team in football. Because if they run the RPO, it's either going to Saquon or Jalen can pull it down, or neither. You can fake the handoff, and guess what? It gets Jalen Hurts in rhythm because that throw will be quick, and guess who's open? A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They'll zip it right in there for a first down. So, Jalen does things. And the thing is, how many times have we seen Jalen extend a drive with his legs, throw a critical touchdown late in the game to bring them back? He has a lot of people don't think about this, but he does have quite a few game-winning drives already in his career, game-tying or game-winning drives. Brock Purdy and the Niners, they can't play from behind. They've never done that well at all. So, it's not a place you want to be, excelling at, playing from behind, because you don't want to keep playing from behind. But, there's a lot of things that he does well that Purdy doesn't. And, Purdy, I like him, like I said, but I don't see enough there to warrant a contract as big as that, when I can think of guys like some of the guys you mentioned, but it's I think we even gave a list of there's maybe 10 to 12 guys that we thought of before we thought of Brock Purdy. So it's an at the end of the day, it's an overpay. I don't care what a lot of Niners fans might say it is. And the thing is, you need to put that money into other resources because you've gutted half your team. And so you're putting a lot of money into a quarterback that you believe is the future. So it has to pay off, because if it doesn't now, it's going to look really bad, once we get really into the meat of that contract. Oh, and also, Pacers are opening it up on the Knicks. The Pacers are up by 13, 3 minutes into the third.
Wow, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Now, remind me, the Pacers have a 3-2 lead in the series?
3-2. So this game's at home, so
yeah,
it would be beneficial if they win at home tonight.
Well, if the Pacers win, the series over.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the update on that one. Excuse me. Pulling off of that real quick, we will stay talking about this team a little bit. It's kind of a minor note, so we won't spend too much time on this. But to compare, we just talked about both San Francisco and we dabbled in Philly a little bit. Those two teams actually matched up on a trade a couple days ago, sending Bryce Huff, who a lot of people believed was not long for Philadelphia, especially after some recent moves that they made. But Bryce Huff was traded from Philly to the 49ers with a mid-round pick going back to Philly. Don't know exactly what that pick's going to be, but we presume it's going to be probably a day 2 or early day 3 pick, probably somewhere in the third, fourth round. That trade is not official yet. It cannot be made official until after June 1st per salary cap rules that I don't understand. But Your thoughts on that? I know it wasn't much of a surprise that he got moved because he had restructured his contract for around 17 million guaranteed, and we're going to eat about 9 million of that, so we're eating only about half of his guarantee. That surprise you, or what was your thoughts on that, if you had any at all?
I mean, I'm just happy the Niners were willing to eat a significant amount of that money.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, because that contract was really bad. Um, I had high hopes for him when he came to Philly. Especially losing Hassan Reddick. I mean, I knew he wasn't going to replace Hassan Reddick, but I just thought that it would be. I thought that it would be better than what it was. I mean, I don't think he didn't register a sack. He registered hardly any playing time in Philly, which was pretty bad. I heard that at some points his attitude was not the greatest.
Probably my worst take in recent football memory is last year. I don't know what show it was on, but that clip's going to haunt me for years. I genuinely said, and this is where Colin does that whole where he was right, where he was wrong. This is where Scoop was wrong. I genuinely believed that Bryce Huff was going to be more impactful for us than Saquon Barkley was.
Whoa!
And that has got to be one of my worst takes ever. That is right up there with Anthony Richardson going to turn around the Indianapolis Colts. That was I've had some good takes the last few years. That one was god awful.
Wow. I didn't expect that.
That's how I try and be 100% transparent on this show, because not a lot of people I think would want to own up to that.
Yeah. But I'm glad you did. The thing is, that's what we do here. Listen,
right.
Everybody's got some freezing cold takes.
Oh yeah.
So I don't blame you. Trust me, I've had some really bad ones in the past myself. But I'm glad that there is a silver lining for the Niners side of this. I mean, because Philly had to get this done. Like, this had to happen. But
right.
For the Niners side of things, I mean, Robert Saleh, this was a guy that had Huff in the past. And it's been
that's a good point with the Jets.
And he made it work. That was when Huff had a double-digit sack season under him, right? Or maybe it was back to Burrow. It was like that one year where he was not a starter, but he had 10 sacks, 11 sacks. So
right.
I think it was 2 years ago or something like that. So listen, they could turn it around. They needed help anyway on their defense because, like I said, they gutted half their team. So
right.
It makes sense for them. I don't know what you're going to get out of him, especially being 2 years older since the last time that Saleh had him, and not being anything, just not doing anything in Philly. So, it's kind of just like this had to happen for both sides. Niners needed it. Saleh probably wanted it, and Philly just had to move money and had to get him out of there because he wasn't going to be on this team this year and he wasn't going to contribute. So, I feel like it's a bigger win for Philly, and that's not just being biased. I think that's just true. But I definitely think it's still a win-win for both sides. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's fair. I I also, with just the moves that the Eagles made this offseason, it's the Eagles have always, and this is not in any way a Philly-centric thing. A lot of teams obviously try and do this, but Philly is always trying to get rid of players, I think, a year early than a year late. It's very Belichickian. And obviously we had we lost Brandon Graham this offseason, but we also brought in several guys. Ojulari came over from New York. Joshua Uke, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he came over as just a 26-year-old. The draft, obviously, we remarked on how a good amount of our early picks the last couple of years have gone on defense. So I think that there's a level of comfort with the Howie has always prioritized the trenches, but that doesn't mean that he's always prioritizing keeping the same guys there for 10 years. He's always he's always pumping guys through. And if a guy can last for 5 to 10 years, like a Jason Kelsey, like a Brandon Graham, like a Fletcher Cox, like a Lane Johnson, then great. But it's the Jordan Mailatas of the world, especially with where he was selected, are the exception, not the rule. It's about the depth is more so than getting the right guys in there in terms of getting 5 or 10 years out of the same guys. More so, it's getting the good depth in there. It's the last couple of years, it's been the Josh Sweats of the world. It's been those types of guys who have really put them over. Was having not just the right guys in front, but the guys to go in there and take the snaps when those guys couldn't.
Yeah, and I love, I said this. I was talking to this to one of my buddies actually yesterday about kind of what Philly does well, and because he had mentioned something of, oh, well, we don't have all of our quote unquote defensive ends this season are all pretty much outside linebackers. I'm like, yeah, they're pretty much interchangeable at this point. Nolan Smith is an outside linebacker, but it's basically he's basically a defensive end.
Depending on what defense you're on, yeah.
Yeah, so so he was talking about that, like, oh, we don't have a true defensive end, whatever, or oh, I don't know, how these guys are going to fit together. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. What Philly does well, and it's why their line dominates so much of a game, and why kind of how he likes to build a team out this way, they like to rotate their guys. It's a lot of rotations in and out. It's a lot of rotations, keeping guys fresh, keeping guys ready to play. And obviously certain packages, you have to swap out certain guys and certain just, formations. So it's smart football, but then it's, how he knows anything is the team behind him, because they do a lot of the work too. They definitely have shown that, the important thing is to let go of guys, because the thing is, you can't let them go too late and get nothing out of it. And you can't let them go kind of right on time sometimes, because it's not going to be.
It's one in a million that you can time it up that perfectly. You're either going to get a little bit of a downward slide with a guy before you let him go, or you're going to let go of a guy, and for the first year or so, it's going to be like, oh damn, did we make a mistake?
It's an anticipation thing. You got to anticipate kind of. Right. With certain guys, certain things you might see in training camp or throughout a season. Hey, maybe this is not it for this, after this season, or maybe, hey, we can get a little something out of the next season, whatever it is. So it's definitely a skill. A lot of teams don't kind of do it well. But at the same time, I like the fact that our franchise as a whole is able to kind of see that. Like, they saw that in Hassan Reddick before really the rest of our fan base did. So that was huge, because nobody wanted to see Reddick go, and then when it came out in the offseason that he was kind of being a little bit selfish on the field, and they hear and see things earlier than we do. So
yeah, and I think a lot of fans, and I'm fully including myself in this. I think a lot of fans in sports forget that what we see, because we have access to like the internet and access to social media and whatever. Like, I think we forget that these guys are in the locker room and in the the hallways with them on a day-to-day basis, and will always, I don't care how prominent social media and AI and whatever become, they will always be hearing, seeing, and smelling and knowing things more than the fans will. And as the saying goes, that's why they get paid the big bucks. And so I'm obviously, as fans, we're going to second guess a coach, or we're going to second guess a manager, or we're going to second guess a GM or an owner. But that's one reason why I tend to be willing to. I know that Philly in particular is not going to want to hear this this phrase, but why I'm willing to trust the process a decent amount of the time with certain things, because because I know that there's got, like, for example, a perfect example, especially as an Eagles fan, is Carson Wentz. I was so frustrated with the way things were going in the beginning of that 2020 season. He was quite literally my favorite player on the Eagles, and by the end of the season, I was done with him. By the end of the season, you could have gone 0-16 that year, or 0-17, whatever it was, and I wouldn't have cared, and I would have welcomed you back with open arms. The second I start hearing Jeff McClain and Dave Spadaro and all these trusted Eagles guys basically saying Wentz is operating on an island, he's basically he's not being a team player necessarily. The second I start hearing that about a quarterback, I'm like, done, move on. Especially when and that I think is that Jalen Hurts. I mean, you've seen the video. I showed you the video of my reaction when we picked Jalen Hurts. I was like, well, I'm not going to say what I actually said, but I basically, I basically was like, what are we doing here? That pick, I think, was the key. It was the epitome of seeing around corners like this franchise has learned to do over the last 5 years and beyond, because they could foresee a problem coming before any fans could. And, sure enough, one of what we thought was going to be the worst pick of that entire draft ended up being perhaps the best pick any team has made in the last 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's what kickstarted, where we are at now. 2 Super Bowl appearances later, a Super Bowl championship, a Super Bowl MVP for Jalen Hurts.
And something that I will never let myself leave out. I don't care that we lost that Super Bowl. Argue with a wall. Jalen Hurts outplayed the guy that was being compared to Tom Brady that year.
Yes. Yep.
So
you're
the best quarterback on the field in 2 Super Bowls, both of which were against the guy that was being compared to the greatest of all time. I'm sorry, that pick is beyond worth it, and that contract is beyond worth it 100 times over.
He's outplayed him 3 times in a row now. Super Bowl 57, the regular season game in KC in the rain, and Super Bowl 59. 3 straight times.
And people still want to tell me he's not a top 10 quarterback. That's fine. Keep your top 10 quarterback. I'll keep my championship ring.
Yep, exactly. And what does Jalen Hurts always say to wrap this whole thing up nicely? What does he always say? What did he say in the press conference one time? Do you remember what he said?
Keep the main thing the main thing. Was that what you're referring to?
Not just that. He said, money is nice. Championships are better. So
that's very true. It's I can't remember how the beginning of it goes, but there was a quote that says something is blank is temporary, flags fly forever. I can't remember what the first word of it is, but something is temporary, flags fly forever. But that last part of it, flags fly forever, is true. And quite honestly, how quickly, I can't think of an executive, forget about football, in pro sports that has gone from potentially HOT seat to HOF seat faster than Howie Roseman has gone. There better be a statue of him out in front of the lake by the time he retires.
Yeah. There absolutely should be, and there will be.
The amount of people, and I'm talking about even Giants and Cowboys media, who acknowledge that he's the best in the business, is tip your cap. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing.
We promised we were going to get to a little bit of hockey before we wrap this thing up. So as we both know by now, the Florida Panthers are the Florida Panthers are about to go into Game 1 on Wednesday against the Edmonton Oilers. So we've seen this story before to an extent. What was your takeaway from the 2 series that wrapped up the ways that they did? We had the Florida Panthers beat the Hurricanes in 5, and then we had the other series that wrapped up recently as well, which was the Oilers beating the Stars also in 5, that wrapped up 2 days ago. So what was your takeaway from both series? Do you think that the best 2 teams got it to the finals? Just give us your general takeaway from those 2.
Well, they were the best 2 teams last year, right? They played each other last year in the finals, and I had said it once the final started. I said I could see a rematch pretty fair and square. So I definitely think, and I said this before the playoffs started, and everybody heard me. All our buddies heard me. I said this to you too. I said I think Florida's the best team out of the East. I think they're the ones that they're going to get it done again. There's no reason why they couldn't. As long as they were healthy, there was no reason why they couldn't. They've got the depth. They've got the experience. All the guys are all-star caliber players to an extent. Sam Bennett's been on fire. Brad Marchand has got under people's skins. He's probably going to be a huge part of this series. I mean, he usually is anyway. He was with Bruins for years. I really do think that, I'll just say right now, I think Florida wins again. But I our friend Nicole, I think she told me she picked the Stars to win it all, and I scratched my head at
I have no
anybody
idea,
that
but
was.
I also think she does like 19 brackets a year. So
Yeah, I don't blame her for that. Listen, that's dedication. But I definitely. Oh yeah, and by the way, the Indy is up by 16 now.
Indy's up
Um,
by 16 over the Knicks.
yep. With 2.5 to go in the third. So,
So happy about
yeah,
that one. I I picked the Thunder to win it all in the NBA championship, but I I still want the Pacers to win this series. I still really want the Pacers to win this
I
series.
think I think at this point, no matter who, if the Knicks come back and win this series, or if Indy finishes, I feel like no matter who it is, they're going to get just steamrolled by OKC. OKC is
The,
hot in every single facet.
Do you remember a
Um,
few years ago in baseball, we watched the Texas Rangers the year that they won, and like the middle of the year, you could just tell like there's something about this Rangers team where it just feels like their year. That's how I felt with the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. Like there's just
yeah,
for so long they were developed so well. They did it right. They committed to the future. They put everything into they made some of the best trades ever. They built everything around not just SGA but some of the guys that they picked up around him. They made fantastic trades. They made underrated pickups. They had a couple of the best front office executives in recent memory, and it you could just tell that at some point it was going to pay off. And this year it just felt like it's finally going to the bill is finally going to come pay up for them.
yeah. It definitely feels that way. And but between Florida being Florida for the NHL and between the OKC having a white hot year. Now it's funny because OKC was basically the best team in the league the entire season. Even though
Right.
they weren't the defending champs, they were the best team in the league the entire season. Florida was the defending champs, had some injuries along the way. They didn't even. I think they finished with maybe like the fourth or fifth best record in the East as a whole. So it wasn't even like they were close to being the number one record in the league. And winning the President's Trophy. And the thing is, in hockey, you don't really want to win the President's Trophy because that's kind of been a curse the last 20 odd years, outside of a couple of teams. So I definitely think that when I look at both the NHL and the NBA for this, I just have a hard time, looking at it as OKC's going to win it all at this point, and Florida, I think, is going to win it because I think too. Western Conference goaltending when it comes to NHL is just not that good compared to the Eastern Conference. It just hasn't been. So I think that really Florida. If I had to make a prediction, I think Florida wins. Now I don't think it's going to be like a 7-game series. I think Florida is they seems like they reloaded and got stronger. Edmonton feels like they just ran it back from what they had last year. So, in my eyes, this series goes. I don't want to say 5 because Edmonton's better than that, but I'll say Florida in 6, and then I feel like whoever wins this series, I'm still saying OKC in 6. So I think 6-6 in both finals at this point.
Interesting. It's now I'm just thinking about this real quick, and it just popped into my head. This wasn't on our agenda to talk about, but it popped into my head as we were talking just then. So we've got the Indiana Pacers potentially, who are ranked as the number 22 market, and then we got the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are ranked as the 26 market. If they go up against each other, is that the first time that two bottom 10 markets go up against each other in the finals? Because I'm
Well,
looking at these other teams. I'm looking at these other teams: the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Thunder, the Bucks, the Spurs. If my computer will stop having a conniption, the Pacers, and there's one team that's not letting me see it, number 23, the Jazz. Like, I can't think of a time in recent memory, at least in recent memory, if not ever, where am I missing something? Certainly not in the time that I've been watching NBA. Have two of those teams gone against one, and I know that list fluctuates throughout history, also obviously, so it wouldn't always be those exact teams. But I'd be curious to see if this is like this might be a record for two particularly small markets going up against each other in the finals, and that would really be a dagger in the heart of people saying that big market teams have it biased toward them or have it rigged toward them.
Well, remind me for a second. Who did OKC play the one year they made to the finals with what? With Durant, Westbrook?
You
Who?
talk. Well, I mean, there was one game or one series against the Miami Heat, if that's what you mean.
I'm trying to remember who they played because I think they did make it to the finals one year with that squad.
One series I know that they played the Miami Heat. So
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but I know that they know because OKC's made it before. I'm pretty sure. I'm 99% sure.
was there?
I can't off the top of my head. I can't remember, but
Um, I'm looking right now. Um, yes, the last time that they lost that they made it to the finals and lost was against the Miami Heat.
okay, that
And
sounds about right.
then
So
when they were the Seattle Supersonics, they lost to the Bulls, but that was when everybody was losing to the Bulls.
yeah. So yeah, I mean this has to be, if not the first time ever, it's got to be for the first time in a very long time that two smaller market areas, well,
And
assuming Indy wins,
Right.
is
But
going to
that's
play each
gonna
other.
be if you have in within a 3 year period a Ranger. Now I don't know jack about markets in the NHL, but if you have a Rangers Diamondbacks World Series and then 2 years later you have a Pacers Thunder NBA championship, I don't want to hear a freaking word in any time in the near future about big market team or small market teams can't win in the NBA or in professional Big Four American sports. No,
Yeah,
crappy owners who prioritize profit over investing in your team and your fans can't win in professional sports. It has nothing to do with your market size. I do not have sympathy for small markets. I have sympathy for fans of small markets who get stuck with crap, cheap owners.
yeah, and it's one of the reasons why we've faulted why we've faulted the Bengals for so long after their Super Bowl loss, that hey, you want to pay your guys, you want to get better and all these different things, but you're being cheap and paying your guys. Now you've paid them a year or two too late, versus when you could have paid them then. And now you don't have a defense now because you don't want to invest in your defense because you're still being cheap. So, you're going to lose probably Trey Hendrickson now. So,
This wasn't on our agenda, but have you been following the Shamar Stewart debacle?
no, what happened?
Okay, so Shamar Stewart, and I'll kind of condense this a little bit because we're running up against the buzzer here. But he was their first round pick this year.
Yeah,
He remains unsigned because essentially they there's an element of injury guarantee that the Bengals do not uh, automatically include to draft rookie contracts or whatever, and are the only team in the NFL to do so, and that's why Shamar Stewart remains unsigned.
wow.
They are the only team to not guarantee this as a preset within their contracts of this type of this caliber, and he remains unsigned because of this. Again, this is not a 100th or 150th overall. This is the 17th overall pick. You pick this guy 17th overall, and you're not doing something that is a standard for every other NFL team to do. What did you expect when he was drafted?
It really is insane when you think about just how crazy the it is. I mean, like I can't even form a logical sense right now to describe how insane that is. But I, God, it's so upsetting when you have guys that these are first round guys. You need to pay them as such. They're rookies. You got to give them their contracts. You got to get them to sign. And you're kind of just sitting there. Both sides are twiddling their thumbs. Like so. But the thing is, it's worse for the organization to be doing that because obviously it's just it's bad optics. So. And the Bengals aren't helping their case, with them being a smaller market, with the fact that they like I was saying they've waited too long to pay some of their guys and they're not paying some of the guys they should have been paying all along. So it's really bad when we talk about like we talk about parity sports, right?
Right.
And like how, yeah, we see all the big market teams are always having great records and a lot of success and getting deep in the playoffs, but it's like the small market team. There's always a team, whether it's in college or the pros, that will go on a run, and they might not have the same NIL money, or they might have the same payroll as a professional team, whatever it is, but they will always go on a run. Now, I wish there was more of them, yes, but that's never going to be the case because a lot of the small market teams don't have, aggressive enough, or strong enough owners and ownership to be able to do a lot of things that they want to do to accomplish. So, you can't, there's a reason why the big market teams have become the quote unquote big market teams. It's not just the area that they play in the country or whatever it is. It's also the fact that they've established a culture of we are aggressive. We're going to assert our dominance both on the field and in the marketplace, and we're going to just straight up just you know outclass or show teams that our system, our way of doing things, it is should be the standard and it's better than what the other teams are doing. So it's all it's really like a threefold thing that some of it falls on the ownership. It's like, but you can't blame the fact that it's a small market anymore because
I
guys will want to go to teams that have good players even if it's in a small market. So
I
it's
would be pounding the table for parity in professional sports if I saw parity in the effort of the owners to build a
yeah,
contender. I don't see that. I see 5 or 6 owners that try to win every year. I see 7 to 10 owners that are saying, we're going to build this thing up. We're building towards a contender, but we have to do this the draft and develop way, which is fine. And then I see 7 to 8 owners who don't give a damn. As long as they're coming up in the black, they just don't give a damn.
yeah,
And I look at you know who Mike Brown's father is, right?
yeah,
Mike Brown's father, for those who don't know, Paul Brown,
yep,
4-time high school national champion, NCAA national champion, 4-time AAFC champion with the Cleveland Browns,
yep,
3-time coach of the year in 49, 51, and 53, and then becomes a 3-time national champion in the NFL in 1950, 1954, 1955. This was his NFL career was largely with the Cleveland Browns. Then he
yeah.
becomes the owner and president of the Cincinnati Bengals, and now this is his son. I cannot think of a bigger trade-off and a bigger fall-off of legend from legend to laughable, that from father to son, than the Brown family. Paul Brown is probably doing somersaults in his grave right now, looking at what his kid is doing. Actually, maybe not, because the Browns and the Bengals hate each other, so maybe he's actually having a good time watching it. But at the same time, like in all seriousness, like I cannot believe the fall off there. And I know that just because you're in blood and whatever of success, that doesn't mean the success is going to get passed down to you. But my God.
It's a shame, and it's we can go on and on all day about just things that get passed down. Like we know eventually at one point Jerry Jones will pass down the Cowboys to his son Steven, or he's basically doing that kind of even now as we speak. But it's but look at the mediocrity that's continuing with them. It's no different than what the Bengals are doing right now. So it's it's tough because you want to see, you know, you should want to carry on a family legacy that means something. And what they're actively doing to it, especially in Mike Brown's case, for lack of a better term, is crapping all over it.
Right.
So it's it's really bad when you just don't kind of have that same sense of responsibility, same kind of work ethic, same kind of just accountability that your ancestors before you did. So it's really sad to see, but you hope one day that they all just kind of finally grow up and accept the fact that, hey, I need to take charge of my team. Otherwise, hey, my fan base is gonna basically ride against me. And I mean, some Bengals fans have already done that. So,
Yep.
and same thing with Dallas. Same thing with Dallas right now with the Jones family. So it's bad. We want to see a better product because the thing is, when all these teams actively compete, it's a better product overall. It's going to make the game better. So it's not the small market. It's the fact that, hey, how aggressive are you? How much do you actually want to win? And that's the bottom line.
Right. Excuse me. Just real quick, I just want to throw one more score update on there. The Yankees did score another run. It's now 15-2. Who would score the second run, but none other than Aaron Judge hitting his 21st home run of the season. Apparently, gifted home run hitters do not need to use steroids. Someone should have told Barry Bonds that 25 years ago. But just, oh my God. Like, I don't care if you're a Yankees fan, a Mets fan, a Red Sox fan, a Dodgers fan. You're not going to see what Aaron Judge is doing a second time in your lifetime. You're going to see greatness from other players. You're going to see great home run hitters. You're going to see all-time talent, and you're going to see great humans doing things that are legendary. What you're specifically seeing from Aaron Judge, enjoy it while you can. We're not going to see this again in our lifetime. That's my sign off. You can take it out of here, Brandon.
I mean, I don't know how to follow it because you're absolutely right. And the thing is it's not. And when he came into the league, everybody had this idea because he was so big, right? That he's only a power hitter. That changed. Well, first of all, that was always incorrect because even in his first full season, he hit 282. So 282 is not a power hitter kind of average, but and his OPS is high. So it's not just power hitter. It's the guy is like I said this before. If there is a turn, and the managers of other teams have said this, players from other teams have said this. If there should be a league above MLB because that's what he'd be playing in.
Yeah.
And so to me, we always talk about 5-tool player, right? He's a 5+ tool player. I don't know what the other ones would be, but it's 5+ because that's how great he is. And Ohtani's another one of those that's like that.
It's what the old heads would call playing the game the right way.
Exactly. This is what you see when a player is so dedicated to their craft and they will do anything it takes to win and will their team to win. This is exactly the kind of player that every team wishes that they had. And it's funny that the postseason performance, right? But we've said this before, me and you, I think just off air, but how many of the greatest hitters of all time, especially in the last 30 years or so, have been bad postseason performers?
Yep.
Nearly all of them.
The same people who tell me that he's a bad postseason hitter, so many of them will turn around and tell me that the greatest hitter they've ever seen is Barry Bonds. Go and look at his postseason stats.
He wasn't good. He didn't even make a lot of postseasons.
They ask me what has Judge done for the Yankees in October. I tell them, show me when the Yankees get to October without Aaron Judge.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, that being said, guys, thanks again. We had a great night tonight. Brandon, this was as fun as always with you. I always look forward to both your own takes and when we start going back and forth, whether it's baseball, football. It's always a great and active dialogue. Guys, I appreciate the viewership as always. We both do. We will see you again next week for our first show of June as summer rapidly approaches. It's going to get a lot more fun, even more than already with baseball, football, basketball, all of these. We're going to get All-Star break coming up soon, trade deadline coming up soon. We're going to get past the NBA moratorium. We're going to get the NFL training camp coming up. It's about to get, we're about to hit that exciting part of summer when it comes to sports. So this is Brandon. I'm Ryan Scoop Woodhams. We will see you next week. Same Scoop time, same Scoop channel. Scoop and Brandon out.